Association, which became the Organization of American Historians. And 100 is a magic number, and we're celebrating that anniversary in the modest way that historians celebrate. The break of dawn is going to find a few of us empty champagne bottles in hand on the streets of Minneapolis or St. Paul. And the locals will barely notice that we've come and gone. Prince will definitely not write a song in our honor entitled "Party Like It Is 2007. Anniversaries are complicated things. They are, as Harvard graduate student Margot Minardi is arguing in a recent dissertation, a means of not only linking the past and the present, but also a means of remaking both. In commemorations, the past is simultaneously remembered, forgotten, and remade as a tool to reshape the present. And to some extent, what I will do today is recall a century of historical writing quite selectively, and many of you might think quite eccentrically, to try to shape the present of historical writing and our public activities in the world today. That I can look to graduate students to try to understand what in the world I'm doing up here reflects three things. The first is the general health of our profession and the hopefulness for the future of historical writing. The second is that I am not proud. I'm glad to steal insights from graduate students. I will take ideas wherever I can find them. And the third, given that I steal from graduate students and that I am not proud, is that I would not be my own first choice, and by the end of this, probably will not be yours, for Commemorator-in-Chief. The position I have taken, I want to emphasize, is commemorator. Ian Terrell is already doing a history of the organization and is doing it better than I could. Commemorating is a much more modest endeavor. Like memory, myth, fiction, and filmmaking, commemorating makes claims on the past, and the difference between these claims and history cannot simply be reduced down to true and false. These various approaches also can mix. Historians have memories, and historians find themselves commemorators. History and commemorating are both forms of mediation between the present and the past. But history is rules about constructing the past. Our historical standards are relatively clear. We can add to existing historical accounts with new and neglected evidence, but we cannot subtract evidence from them. We can interpret, but only within strict professional rules. We are a discipline. These rules do not apply to commemorating, as any 4th of July speech, college commencement address, or centennial celebration will demonstrate. Commemorating is a lot easier for people who think the past is plastic, and whose goal is forgetting everything that is not, as they used to say when I taught at the University of Utah, faith promoting. Yet in remaining a historian and acting as a commemorator, I gravitate to the common ground between them. Both are political mediations that attempt to muster the past to change the present. For a century now, we as historians have aspired both to be true to the past as the people we study understood it, and to make that past available to the present to do work in the world. One price historians pay for mediation is that part of their histories are not only mortal, they are so transient that they usually don't even outlive the historian. As mediators, we can achieve only temporary success. The world changes too fast. It outdistances our histories. Now, none of this is new. Discussions of such issues are one of the constants of what I'm going to modestly call the OAH century. Carl Becker, who wrote so compellingly about so many things, and who seems to reappear as often as we summarily dismiss him, made the same points in 1921. He was, unfortunately for my commemorating, publishing in the American Historical Review. He was reviewing H.G. Wells' Outline of History, a well-worn copy of which survives from my father's bookshelves, but is now buried in a storage locker that I've not been in 3 years. And my failure to search for it so I could wave it here before you is only further proof of my limits as a commemorator. Outline of History was the most spectacular success of any historical mediation during the OAH century. It was a world history before there really was a world history, and its timeline ran back to the beginning of the planet. It was written by a novelist, but was footnoted by historians who barked and bit at Wells' heels like so many quarrelsome dogs. Bestseller lists are admittedly a crude measure, but when Outline of History topped the year's bestseller list in 1922, it became the first and the last history to do so in the OAH century. Richard Hofstadter and Charles and Mary Beard never made one list. They didn't even come close. Of the historians whose books ranked among the top 10 bestsellers for any given year during the 20th century, most are by people named Adams. Henry made it in 1919 for his education, and James Truslow Adams in 1930 for his The Addams Family. Beyond telling you that being an Adams writing about the Adamses was the surest threat to historical popularity during the OAH century, I'm not sure what else this reveals. Carl Becker makes very clear that Outline of History was a mediation, and the best marker of self-conscious historical mediation was and remains the claim to be a new history. Becker identified the common characteristics of the new histories that have dominated this century, and which he said arose with the Enlightenment, as being, quote, not primarily as something to be intellectually apprehended, but rather as something to be practically appraised in the light of ends that are thought to be desirable and attainable in the future. Or as Becker more famously said, each age reinterprets the past to suit its own purposes. In the new histories, he said, the past was, quote, a screen onto which each generation projects its vision of the future. The screen was a nice but unfortunate metaphor, and it contributed to an argument between two false alternatives. The past was not as blank as Becker's screen, and Becker never treated it that way in his own histories. Still, the metaphor served as fodder for increasingly fruitless arguments about the new histories. Critics of the new histories use the metaphor to claim new historians denied the integrity of the past. The counterpunches that the new historians launched against their critics were aimed at an equally implausible target. Claims to write pure histories, detached histories, objective histories. We as a profession, however, have not been so stupid as to simply repeat this argument ad infinitum. Most historians, I think, both accept that the past is not a blank screen and abandon any claim to a God's eye view and pure objectivity. Most of us also maintain that there can be a history that is true to the past and can do work in the present. As Thomas Haskell has argued so compellingly, admitting that there is no view from nowhere and that we all write from a certain perspective does not mean abandoning the commitment to fairness. But it is also true that wanting to write history in Richard Hofstadter's words, quote, out of an engagement with the present, means that we enter onto very perilous ground. Our engagement with the present demands powerful restraints so that it does not escape us and run off into propaganda, or even worse, nonsense. The editors of the Mississippi Valley Historical Review, when confronted with an outbreak of scholarly nonsense and the polemical excesses that greeted the U.S. entry into World War I, prescribed the traditional scholarly virtues of skepticism and detachment. This still remains a useful prescription. It is the attempt to deploy the past to influence the present that makes, in my terms, history into a mediation. Ultimately, all mediations fail, if only because the world changes around us. But good histories can survive as credible accounts of the past after their mediation has faded.